It's said to be one of the best investments anyone can make in their own future, post-secondary education. But it can be an intimidating prospect, especially for those who haven't always thrived in the typical classroom setting or who have been out of school for many years. And of course, there is the cost. Joining us now to consider how to improve accessibility for all, Jim Vanderveken, Dean for Community Partnerships and Experiential Learning at Mohawk College, Sue Gillespie, Chief Executive Officer of Pathways to Education, Fiona Deller, Senior Executive Director of Research and Policy at the Higher Education Quality Council of Ontario, and Coty Zachariah, National Chair of the Canadian Federation of Students. Welcome to you all.
Thank you.
Really looking forward to this conversation. But first, we'd like to show you a video of what your institution, Mohawk College, is doing. And this is from our producer, Patricia Kozika, and how Mohawk College is trying to get rid of the barriers that are preventing people from being in school. Let's take a look.
I just love to do it. I love to be around lumber. I love the smell of the wood. I love to hammer. I love to drill. I laugh at that question that they have in job interviews. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Because I never saw here.
This is Hamilton's newest post-secondary offering, a mobile classroom designed to give people a taste of the trades over 3 action-packed weeks. It was rolled out in the fall, and what makes it especially unique is the cost.
The best part about it, that it was free, and I'm like, wow, this is good stuff.
The tuition-free model is a staple of Mohawk College's City School. The program was launched in 2015 with the intention of removing barriers to post-secondary education.
What we were hoping to do was bringing college education right into the community, and that is something that our understanding is that it's not currently being done at this level, offering free college credits within marginalized communities.
For 56-year-old Elizabeth Fleming, it's also an opportunity to pursue a post-secondary path much different than the one she first set out on.
I was a lawyer. Shh, don't tell anyone. People look at you differently. But I wasn't happy. I was stressed out. I was working 60 hours a week.
Handiwork has been something she's been drawn to since she was little, but now she wants to try and make a living at it.
My parents were working class. And I got this very distinct impression when I was a kid that they were looking for us to go to university. Other people in the family, my dad's family, might have been tradespeople, but it was viewed as less than going into the trades.
That's a big part of the city school. Anybody can join in the education. Like, there are no limits or limitations.
Curtis Blake, who already has some trades experience, still had to overcome the challenges of going back to school at age 48.
The first day, actually, I came in, I was a little bit nervous because I'm saying, what is it that I'm going to be doing? Is it something that I already know, or am I going to be doing a lot of theory? How am I going to cope because I've been away for so long? But then I realized that, your fear basically keeps you back from learning as much as you can. So if you release that fear and let it go and just move forward to whatever it is that you want, you can achieve it.
Over at Hamilton's Eva Rothwell Center, future career plans are also taking shape at another free city school class. This one, though, is an all-female one.
This is us. We've done the electrical, we've done the drywall. They did a little bit of backsplash tiling, how to install a vanity and mount it to the wall. We're going to be doing some plumbing. We're showing results here, and not just in what we're building, but in what it's done for these girls, empowering them and giving them confidence and helping them to make decisions and just feel capable. Good girl.
I really enjoyed the electrical. I've applied to a pre-apprenticeship starting in January. When you're an apprentice, you get paid to learn. So that's really great. And I wish I had known about that. I had no idea how apprenticeships worked before that.
Just like Elizabeth, Mercedes has paid the price of post-secondary pressure.
Yeah, I've accumulated about 20 grand in OSAP debt. I pay like $375 a month, and I don't have a degree to show for it. You can do it right directly onto the...
Like that?
Okay. I remember my dad saying to me when I said that I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, he's like, just go to university and you'll figure it out. Well, I'm 28. And that was 10 years ago. And I hadn't figured it out.
Nice job.
No one ever suggested college. No one definitely ever suggested trades in my family, even though I have a lot of handy people in my family, but they're all male.
Rebecca learned her skills in a male-dominated environment. She was the only female in her high school machine shop class.
All the girls were in home ec. If you look back in '83 when I graduated, it was nurses, stewardesses, or flight attendants now. They worked at the bank, secretary at a medical office. Those were the jobs. That's what people went for.
Now, her mission is to break that stigma.
There's so many opportunities for an electrician's charging $85 an hour minimum. That's nice money. You might have a university degree and never make that kind of money.
For some people, the university thing totally works. Like they can just go learn those 4 years and they go on to do masters. They're really drawn to that method of learning. But for some people, it's just not realistic.
Work this way.
The hope is this type of learning environment can help change the face of an industry. Women will be needed to help fill the large skilled labor gap left behind by aging baby boomers. So the opportunity to build a foundation in the field couldn't come at a better time.
I'm very proud of them. Like they came in, their hands were trembling, but they applied themselves. The first step is stepping to the plate.
At the age of, let's say 10 or so, actually I made my first little go-kart, you know, and once I made that, actually I was so excited, you know. I said to myself, if I can do this, I can, you know, go further. But now I'm in this, I'm just, you know, I'm even more excited, you know. That little boy is still there. It's still there.
It's never too late to do stuff. It's never too late to have your dream. It's never too late to do what makes you happy.
The joy from some of those students is palpable. And great job, Patricia. We'll talk more about what Mohawk College is doing to decrease the barriers to access to a post-secondary education. But first, I'd like to know from each one of you if you could describe the state of access to post-secondary education in our province. Fiona, let's start with you.
Oh, okay. So I think that we have in Ontario actually really high participation rates. So our participation rate is around 70%. So overall in the aggregate, when you look at how we're doing fine. But I think that if you look at the individual level, we still have a lot of people really struggling with that pathway through high school into post-secondary. And I think one of the things that we do in our system is that when we find a youth with challenges or barriers, we make their life even more difficult.
In what ways?
So, for instance, I'll give you for instance. Youth from a lower socioeconomic background, they have to apply for student aid, right? Finances are a difficulty. And the student aid application process is actually extraordinarily complex. I mean, I started my career in Canada Student Loans. And the first time I helped my son, who went back to school as a mature student, fill out the student aid forms, I messed up. It's not an easy process. Another example might be a student who has a disability or struggles with mental illness. When they get to the post-secondary system, they have to redo their accommodation all over again, find the supports on campus. Very often there's a waiting list for your first appointment. We make it more difficult for them. And I think what we need to look to is what is the responsibility of the system to change to accommodate students, right? So I think, you know, today we're going to talk a lot about programs, and a lot of these programs are really, really interesting. But what can we learn from these programs that can actually be applied at the system level? So we actually have a system, a post-secondary system that acts like a welcome mat rather than a gatekeeper.
Ah, gatekeeper. Interesting. Coty, what about you? Is post-secondary education accessible in Ontario?
I would say that there's definitely barriers to education in Ontario. In Ontario, we pay the highest tuition in the country. That's a well-known fact. And on top of that,
we're going to be talking more about that in a second.
Yeah, if you come from a mid or low-income family and you have to take a student loan, there's interest on that loan. So students who are graduating with an average of $30 or $30,000 in debt are having to pay an average of $10,000 on top of that because of interest on that loan. But essentially, that's still targeting some of the most vulnerable learners. Those who can't afford to pay the high upfront cost of education are essentially having to pay more. So some of our most vulnerable learners are having to pay more for education, and I don't think that's a fair system.
And then going into debt through the process.
Absolutely.
And Jim, what do you think?
Well, I think we've made significant progress as a province. I think that the government's efforts to essentially introduce a tuition strategy for low-income families, I think marks a very significant departure from the past and in terms of increasing accessibility. But there are still populations, and we know that, for example, in Hamilton, that there are still significant areas of the city, the lower city particularly, where there are people involved in poverty who live precarious lives. And we want to make sure that everyone in the community can benefit from the post-secondary experience. And I think it is one of making sure that, as Fiona points out, we need to help them navigate those pathways because they can be complex and they do have challenges that they're taking care of dependents, they have other responsibilities, and thinking about a post-secondary journey can be somewhat a little bit overwhelming for them. So how do we help them as institutions and as the community in support of that goal?
And you're doing some great stuff at Mohawk College. I keep stringing along, but we'll get more into that. Sure. And finally, Sue, what do you think?
There are some challenges, absolutely, in applying for financial aid and other supports for students who desire to engage, whether it's in the trades, colleges, or university system. I think there's an element about making sure that the supports are holistic. So we've learned at Pathways that holistic supports are essential.
What does holistic mean? Sorry.
It means really looking at all the potential barriers and offering solutions to those barriers. So the financial barriers are significant, but there are other barriers. Jim alluded to some of the life circumstances. If you have children and you want to go back to school, or other dependents that you're responsible for, or you need to continue to work. So tuition isn't the only cost to education. You also need to think about how you're going to get to and from school and what is that time commitment. And so thinking about the financial barriers, but there could also be other things if you need academic support. Or sometimes it's just really helpful to have a mentor, someone around you that has gone through that same career path as you're thinking about and will encourage you when there are some challenges.
That's what we would call social capital, right? Mm-hmm. But that not everybody has access to that.
That's exactly right. Yeah. That's exactly right. So.
Let's take a look at some of the numbers that we've been kind of talking about. The average undergraduate tuition fees across Canada, and the average undergraduate tuition in Canada is $6,571 at $1, and Ontario students are paying almost $2,000 more than that. Let's take a look at the most expensive tuition in Canada. The 5 most expensive undergraduate tuition fees are found right here in Ontario. Number 1, we've got London at almost $11,000. Second place, we've got Kitchener-Cambridge at almost $9,500. In third place, we've got Kingston at over $9,000. And fourth place, we've got Toronto at $8,591. And lastly, we have at number 5, Hamilton at $8,200. Coty, as a student representative, what goes through your mind when you see these figures?
I think about all the students who see those numbers and think that they can't afford to go to school, who don't want to take on student debt. So I see those numbers as barriers. At CFS, we believe that education should
What's
be...
What's CFS?
Canadian Federation of Students, sorry. We believe that education is a right, and for Indigenous students, education is a treaty right. And that was outlined in the Royal Proclamation in 1763. Mm-hmm. So
you're saying Indigenous students also have to pay?
Indigenous students definitely still have to pay, and that's kind of a myth, is people think that Indigenous students get education for free. There is programs like the Post-Secondary Student Support Program, which help Indigenous learners get in, but the fact is the program is chronically underfunded. So an example, from 2006 to 2011, 18,500 students were denied funding through that program. And that's roughly half of the students that were eligible. So that's half of the Indigenous learners that were eligible through that 5-year span that didn't get that same access that, say, I did, because I did get access to that program.
But people in your family didn't as well, right?
That's right. Actually, my little brother was denied funding twice from that program. So now he's in a situation of, well, what do I do? Where do I go? And we believe, and I believe personally, that education is a tool of empowerment and a pathway out of poverty. I know that because I've lived that through that access. But I think about, all those students who didn't get that access.
How has education changed your life?
Drastically. Before going into college, I didn't know kind of where I was going, what I was doing. I didn't see myself in academia. I didn't think that that was a place for me. until I got through those doors. So
And you didn't think it was a place for you because?
Because I came from a low-income family. None of my parents went to post-secondary education. I was the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that can be daunting to be that first one to kind of break that barrier and go through that. So.
And we're lucky to have you here today because you've been traveling.
I have been.
And you've just been back from a summit in the U.S. that discussed education access. And what were your biggest takeaways from that summit in terms of the different kinds of challenges that we're experiencing in North America, not just in Ontario?
Yeah, I mean, my biggest takeaway was kind of the similarities. Students down there, their tuition is higher in America, but
because it's almost like people pay like $60,000 to $70,000 a year for school, right?
Somebody said 80,000.
80,000.
80,000 a year while I was down there, and that's a barrier.
Mm-hmm.
That's preventing a sharp mind from those opportunities that.
But when you
we're
hear
getting.
those numbers compared to what we're paying, some people might think, well, we're paying a tenth of that. So, do we really have barriers to post-secondary education in Canada, or are we just not realizing that we have it better than other countries?
I would say it's still a barrier because it's still preventing youth from getting in. Our situation is different from the USA, but it's still a reality here that that's preventing youth from getting into those institutions.
Fiona, you have a PhD in the field of higher learning, but you had to overcome some of your own hurdles to get there. What happened with you?
Sure. So I actually quit high school.
And now you have a PhD.
And now I have a PhD. So I mean,
well done.
Thank you very much. One of the things, though, that I think is probably important to think about in terms of my story is that I always knew I was going to go back. I mean, I come from a family where both my parents had university educations. My mother's professor, I felt very familiar on a university campus. And when I was ready to go back, which was later in my 20s, in my mid-20s, I knew how to navigate the system in such a way that I could figure out how to go back as a mature student. And I actually had my son in my first year of university, and even it was not that difficult for me to figure out how to navigate because I felt comfortable there. I felt like I belonged there, you know. And I think that is, to be honest, that's a privilege, right? That I brought with me from my family background. So,
but what if you don't have anybody in your family that's ever gone to school,
exactly,
and you face these barriers? Like, what then? Does that mean that you're not destined at all to go to school?
No, absolutely not. And I'll give you an example. If you have two students, so you have Lucy and Jocelyn, and Lucy's parents did not go to post-secondary, and Jocelyn's parents did. Jocelyn decides not to go to post-secondary herself, and Lucy goes through university. Jocelyn still does better in the labor market. That's how pervasive. There's a lot of, it's social capital. I mean, as you said, you know, Jocelyn's parents know how to teach her to have that confidence that she belongs somewhere, that she knows how to navigate a system, that system is hers for the taking. I mean, there is all of that travels with us throughout our educational pathway. And what I'm arguing for in terms of system change is not that we give anybody a free ride or take away individual responsibility or choice, but that we don't create more barriers for students who already have barriers. We don't compound those challenges by saying, now you have to apply for a program and fill out a form and figure it out and figure out all this information that's coming at you really hard and really fast that you have no way of navigating. If we can figure out how to make the system more responsive to students instead of setting up more challenges, more barriers for those students who already have challenges and barriers, I think we'll go a long way to having that welcome mat instead of that gatekeeper.
I can attest to that because I did go through that when I was applying for OSAP. But Jim, Hamilton is one of the most expensive cities, has one of the highest tuition rates in the province. How are you able to offer these courses at Mohawk College for free?
Well, I think what we did was first of all, we had to understand what the challenges were in the community. And when we looked at there was a report done by the local newspaper, the Hamilton Spectator, and they did a series of articles called Code Red. And really what that became a catalyst for really coalescing the community around the issues of poverty and some of the social determinants of health and the tremendous disparities that existed in the community between neighborhoods, between the northeast side of the community and the west side of the community. So We had, one in those northern neighborhoods, North End neighborhoods. We have 1 in 5 individuals who don't have a high school diploma. We have 1 in 3 who don't have any experience in a post-secondary environment. We have 1 in 5 children who are touched by poverty. There are some very significant challenges for the community. And I think what Mohawk decided to do is, rather than to take a passive approach to that particular challenge, we decided that we wanted to become a leader in that regard.
How can you afford it?
Well, what we're doing is we're leveraging a number of different things. We are leveraging not only some of our resources that we have within the college community, we are leveraging some partnerships as well. We have particularly some friends in the community, philanthropists who who want to join us on this mission. And so through a combination of that, we are able to underwrite. But I think it drives the point that we need to make sure, as you could see, the tuition levels are significant. Frankly, in order to apply for the college, you have to apply through OCAS. So the Ontario College Application Service. You have to pay a $95 fee in order to get into OCAS, in order to apply.
We're also assuming that everybody has access to internet.
Well, exactly. So digital equity is one issue. Do they have $95 to pay the OCAS fee? And we talk about $8,000 for tuition on an annual basis. Some individuals and families don't have $95 to apply for that OCAS opportunity. So we need to be very cognizant of these challenges, and we need to put interventions in place. I think the other piece here is not only just the affordability, but the value of a post-secondary education. We need to make sure that people understand why they're pursuing a post-secondary education, what the outcomes will be for themselves, for their families, for their children. And certainly in Hamilton, and the initiative that we've embarked on is one of not only affecting those individuals that are participating in our classes, but that generational shift as well, impacting the children of those participants so that they understand what it means to be part of a post-secondary environment and what the outcomes would be for those individuals.
In the video that we did, that we saw from Patricia, they were construction classes.
Yes.
Do you offer other classes besides that?
Yes, we have, of course, we're a comprehensive college. We have a variety of academic areas: human services, engineering, technology, business, marketing, advertising, liberal studies, and so on. So what we have done is intentionally make sure that we have a variety of opportunities for individuals. We want to make sure that regardless of where their interests lie, we want to engage them in that initial step. And we recognize that the pathway to a post-secondary education is really one of shallow steps forward. It's making sure that they have the self-agency, the self-confidence, the self-esteem to ensure that they can move forward with that dream that they have, the hopes that they have for themselves and their families.
And so you work with high school students and you help them, graduate from high school and then to face what's coming up next. What do you think of what Jim is doing at Mohawk College?
Yeah, it's fabulous. And our Pathways program in Hamilton is one of the key partners where what we really appreciate with Mohawk College is the students, the college students, are coming to the community where our Pathways students are and are setting a great example. They're building relationships with those students and they're supporting those students in that decision-making process so that they can see themselves reflected a little bit, start thinking about the opportunities and learning about what college is all about. And, I think one thing that is really important as students are trying to make these decisions is that they understand their choices. And there is a lot around that. So they do have to think about the value. They have to think about what careers they might have, which is really tricky because we also know that, there's frequent conversations around what are the future careers and how do we know? But
we still value certain professions more than others.
Absolutely,
for whatever
absolutely.
reasons.
We often talk about at Pathways, we might share with a student who wants to be a doctor. We talk about all the other careers within the hospital setting that support good health. And so it's supporting the students to really understand what the opportunities are. And at Pathways, we start that process in grade 9. And it is a little bit about affordability is a big, big barrier. And in grade 9, the students might not even believe that they can attend post-secondary education because they can't imagine how they would ever afford school. And the parents may not even encourage post-secondary. Parents will say to us, I didn't want to encourage my student to go on because I can't imagine how I'm going to support one of my children, let alone if I have more than one child, how will I ever enable them to go to post-secondary? So that process around educating Canadians about the value of education, the supports that are available, and then simplifying the processes to access those supports, minimizing the risks that students are taking when they graduate high school, so that...
Minimizing the risks, what does that mean?
Yeah, so a few different things, and I think everyone here has raised different examples. First of all, taking on the debt that post-secondary education may present is one of those risks. But making that transition isn't always easy. There's challenges along the way. Anybody who's gone through that experience understands that first year you are in a new environment. You don't necessarily understand fully how to best engage, where to seek out additional supports. And very quickly, if something goes wrong that may not, maybe you're ill yourself or maybe a family member you care for has some challenges or you need to work extra hours, a week can go by and suddenly you're behind. And that just increases the pressure significantly on the students. So, I appreciate your perspective on the shallow steps. Education is a journey and it is not a straight path. And there are many small bumps to navigate and definitely some bigger systemic barriers that present a challenge. The supports are there, and so it's taking that holistic approach and really helping the students and their families navigate the various systems as best as they can.
Well, the government has been trying to make it a little easier on students with its recent funding commitments. Let's take a look at a few of those initiatives. OSOP transformation of Ontario's 800,000 full-time students, almost a quarter of those, 225,000 individuals, are receiving free average tuition. 13,500 of those are single mothers. Open Textbooks Initiative, a $1 million commitment for creation of free online textbooks and resources for students. $3 billion over next 10 years that will be invested in post-secondary infrastructure. Coty, I want to ask you, what do you think of these financial promises?
And the thing with single mothers, I think it's great that those opportunities are being out there, but it's still, in the federal budget, it didn't address the high cost of childcare, which prevents a lot of parents from
And in some places, it's more than what you pay for university or college, right?
Absolutely. In Toronto, I think we have some of the highest childcare in the country. I know that personally because I'm raising a child in Toronto. And that prevents, more often than not, the mothers from going to school. And 60% of students in college university are female now. So that's...
Well, then there's the budget that was tabled, they are now offering, if they are reelected, free spaces for kids 2.5 and older. Do you think that would help?
2.5 and older, what about the kids that are younger than that? I mean, these are great initiatives, but I think the piecemeal reforms still are leaving some people out. Some people who aren't eligible for those programs or that their kids aren't old enough to get into that care program.
It's been a while since I was in university, but I remember textbooks were very expensive.
Textbooks are very expensive.
What do you think of the Open Textbooks Initiative?
I think that's great. I think providing more resources to students to lower the costs. TOE textbooks are very high. They go up every year. So again, that's a barrier. Eliminating that barrier reduces stress on students.
And Jim, what do you think of some of these financial promises?
Well, I think that although I think those investments are very valuable, there is still much groundwork to be done by individual organizations and partners in each of the communities to make sure that we're connecting the pieces for individuals.
And Fiona, what do you think of these financial promises?
I think that it's a really nice first step. It's a really nice acknowledgement of the fact that tuition can be a sticker shock. It can be a barrier in and of itself, and that people need a little bit of help with that. The idea of free tuition is a very powerful idea. It can motivate people.
But it's great for our generation or our children, but who's going to pay for that in the long run?
Well, I think it's even more than that. It's that tuition in and of itself is not the only barrier. And to have a program that suggests that tuition in and of itself is the only barrier is a little bit disingenuous. It means, like, as Jim said, you know, there is a lot more groundwork to be done. There's a wonderful story about an architect at McMaster who was asked to design an outdoor space. And they said, where are you going to build the pathways? And he said, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down grass and I'm going to watch where the students walk for a year. And after a year, I'm going to see where they walk, and that's where I'm going to put the pathways.
Well, I'm glad you brought this up because Coty, you're a student rep. What are some of the top concerns of students on campuses?
One of the biggest ones is student debt. Right now we have a $28 billion national student debt. And I would say that, you know, we live in a country that can afford free tuition. I mean, I think even everybody deserves universal access to education, even kids of some of our wealthiest. I think where some of the problems lie is like in the tax loopholes that exist. Every year, $50 billion of taxes goes uncollected. And that's enough to fully fund the education system. And that's every year. So I think no matter which family you come from, you deserve that right to education.
And Indigenous students, we were talking about it a little earlier. In the North, they're disproportionately, and they're not represented in post-secondary institutions. Why should we all be concerned about that?
I think we're leaving a section of our demographic behind. Indigenous youth is the fastest growing demographic in the country, and those are youth that we could be empowering to be contributing to the economy. But if we're not providing them the same supports that we're providing to youth in major cities and municipalities, we're essentially setting those youth up to fail.
So you want to add something?
Yeah, you know, at Pathways, we do have a number of our programs across the country serve Indigenous students as well. And what we hear from them are the things that Coty just talked about is Indigenous students also would like the opportunities and the choices that everybody across Canada has. It is part of their right, whether they're First Nations, Métis, or Inuit. And they are the fastest growing segment. And so to your question around value or how are we going to afford education long term, how we can't afford not to. If we want Canada to be a prosperous nation, we need to enable all of our young people to be successful. And it doesn't matter who you are or where you live, you should have access to the opportunity of education, the opportunity of learning. And I would add experiential learning to that as well, because we've been talking quite a bit about the formal education system, but there is another whole element, and Jim, you're nodding your head, around experiential learning. And that starts in the youngest years, going into the high school years, and that's what shapes, you know, your future ideas of what you can accomplish, and then having that opportunity after high school to continue to build on your experiences coupled with a formal education is so important. And if we don't support all of our students across the country, regardless of who they are or where they live, I think we're doing all of us a disservice.
For the future of Canada.
Exactly.
We only have a few minutes left, but Fiona, based on what research shows, how early should early intervention begin to help change the path of higher risk students?
I think there is a lot of debate about that, but I think as early as absolutely possible. I mean, one of the things that we see is literacy rates start taking hold in grade 3, right? As early as grade 3, you start to see a gap in literacy rates between low-income and high-income youth. Right, those literacy rates have a long-term impact on your ability to academically achieve and get into post-secondary. So that early. When we tell all students from a very early age that they have choice and that their educational pathways, anything is possible, and then we support them in getting there, that's what we should be doing as a system.
I want to ask you about this program in Indianapolis that aims to give all students access to education beyond high school. Can you tell us about that?
So this program is actually really good because it's very, very simple. What it says is if you are in the program, we guarantee you free tuition to any institution in Indianapolis.
So
right?
university, college, whatever you want.
Anywhere you want to go. Full tuition. All you have to do is stay in the program and graduate from the program, and there are very high expectations. You have to get a high GPA to graduate from the program. But then they also give you all the supports, the mentoring, which is extraordinarily important, the peer mentoring, academic tutoring, extracurricular activities, to be able to actually round out your expectations and your aspirations. And they bring in parental engagement as well, which is really, really important, as Sue knows. They involve the parents in the program, and students do really well when they graduate from this program and go on to post-secondary, right?
Could you see something like that done in Ontario, Jim?
Well, I think we could, certainly. I think it's a very innovative practice. I think we're heading in that direction. I think that, we talk about, particularly for, again, families that are impacted by poverty, we talk about housing security, food security, health security, income security. And I think what we're talking about now is really education security and making sure that those individuals, parents and children, have clear pathways forward for themselves in terms of, not only in terms of learning and acquiring the skills, but understanding what the outcomes will be in terms of employment and career pathways.
Fiona, I'd like to ask you the last question. If you were to create a 3-point plan for addressing the biggest access barriers, a big question, to post-secondary education, what would it include and why?
It's a really good question. I think it would include a lot more continuity between the K-12 and the post-secondary system. I think the two systems don't talk to each other as well as they should. The K-12 system tends to take responsibility for you until you are graduated from K-12, and then 2 short months later, you enter into or sometimes for some people, you enter into a completely different system, which has completely different rules and completely different environment. And so some more continuity between those two, I think would be fantastic. I think, again, starting really early with the educational pathway, but in a way that actually is responsive to how students want to learn. And doesn't require, for instance, students to make decisions in grade 8 about where they're going to be in 6 years, right? I think that, not to go sort of too far down the streaming path, but there is enormous amount of evidence that making those decisions in grade 9 actually disadvantages people who are already experiencing systemic bias. And then I think thirdly, a lot more support for alternative pathways. I think we have this idea that, sort of the successful pathway is right out of high school into into post-secondary, through post-secondary full-time, and then into the labor market. And that's a very sort of traditional, sort of old-fashioned way of thinking about the educational pipeline, and it just doesn't suit a lot of people's needs. And so to be able to say, you have a different pathway than you do, than I do, than you do, and that's completely fine, because we have to be responsive to what you need at different times in your life. And the Mohawk program is a really good example of that. More of that, I would say, and not treating those alternative pathways like they're marginal.
Thank you all for making the time to come to TVO and you gave us a lot to think about. Jim, Fiona, Sue, Coty, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Very much.
Thanks.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.